None of my teachers want to be in my face.
Social media has created a much different childhood for kids now than when we grew up. Studies show teens spend as much as 9 hours a day on social media, and research shows alarming effects it's having on teenage girls.
We see rates of depression and anxiety and suicide and loneliness going up among young people. And I'm concerned that social media is an important driver of that youth mental health crisis.
While social media can be a positive outlet for teens, it can just as easily have the opposite effect.
I think it can make teens feel very isolated. I think it can make teens feel like they're not good enough.
We do know that there's a pretty strong correlation, an observed correlation, between heavier social media use and body image dissatisfaction.
Research shows 95% of teens are on social media. More than a third say they're on constantly.
Social media has become ingrained in our lives and can be extremely addictive.
Young people have never felt more alone.
My phone, and I'm on it all the time.
46%
of teens
Do you believe social media addiction is a real issue? Why or why not?
I do think that, like any type of addiction, social media addiction is definitely a real thing that people struggle with. I think that it's becoming more of a noticeable issue, a more talked about issue in today's society. But I think it took us a little while to get there to understand that it's a real thing. I think because there isn't necessarily a way to see physically how it's affecting someone, like maybe an alcohol addiction or a drug addiction or something like that. It sort of flew under the radar for a little while, but I definitely think that there are ways to see how, if somebody is addicted to social media, that there is definitely a negative impact on their mental health, on their overall well-being, on the way that they interact with people around them. But I definitely think that it is something that we have seen in the past has become an issue, and I think that moving forward is definitely going to be an issue for sure.
There are people who are definitely addicted to social media. Yeah, I think that's undeniable. I think just like any other thing that you can be addicted to, some people are really addicted to it and some people aren't. One of the statistics that I've read is that there are worldwide about 210 million people who are addicted to social media. Now that's a lot of people, but when you look at just the United States, the number becomes about 31 million people. So now you're talking about probably 10% of the population, and I think where it starts really affecting people is when they're trying to figure out their own identity. And so the way that they do that is they rely on a lot of strangers to help them with that. But yes, I think the answer is, especially for people who kind of fall between that middle school to early college age, maybe even late college age, yeah, it's a big deal. And I think it can affect people a lot at that age group.
I do believe social media addiction is a real and serious issue. Research has shown that social media use can actually trigger the same reward centers in the brain as drug addiction. And so people who are trying to cut back on social media actually experience the same withdrawal symptoms or similar withdrawal symptoms as someone who's dealing with drug addiction. But the scariest thing about social media, and I feel like what a lot of people don't realize, is that the addictive nature of social media platforms is by design. You have features like infinite scrolling, you have features like notifications and alerts, you have features like autoplay, all of those features kind of encourage an addictive behavior. Probably the worst one is the personalization algorithms. The algorithms are designed to present content that, are likely to resonate with each user. And so as a result, it just increases the likelihood of continued engagement.
The people who put these platforms on have a vested interest in keeping your attention for as long as they can. And they know the games that keep you really hooked in.
If you are in a certain location on a certain Wi-Fi server, and you Google something, like you want to know, whatever, it will then start serving you ads for that thing that you Googled. And not only that, anybody else who is on that Wi-Fi at the same time will also start getting those ads. So that's why, like, when you're at somebody's house and you're talking about Fruit Loops or whatever, and all of a sudden you start getting Fruit Loop ads, chances are somebody looked it up on their phone and now everyone's getting it. We always say, oh, the government's listening, and not necessarily, but to a certain extent, yeah, because they know that what we're thinking about, what we're looking up on the internet, what we are spending our time, researching, is probably stuff that they can sell to us. So it's really interesting how all that works.
Right now, I think the thing that's happened, this started, I don't know if it was TikTok or Instagram or what, but the short little videos that they start the platform with. And this one was kind of funny. So let me see the next one. And that was kind of funny too. I'm like, well, I wonder what the next one's about. And that one's kind of good too. And so, you might send some to your friends or send some to your spouse. And did you have the intention that you were going to be sharing videos when you got on your phone? And the answer is no. That's not why you got on there. It wasn't that you wanted to fritter away the next hour or two just doing practically nothing. No, they know that. They intentionally use that.
Have you seen an increase in anxiety, depression, or loneliness linked to social media?
Yes, numbers don't lie. And, just search for any article about the link between social media and, mental health issues, and the numbers are scary and staggering. Just studies have shown such a high correlation between social media use, heavy social media use, and increased rates of anxiety and depression and loneliness. Every article that I've seen or in any research, it seems to be, the stats I'm reading are about younger people. And I just think the constant comparison that's just in your face all the time, and reduced face-to-face interactions are key factors in those correlations.
One of the things that I would say about when you look at the anxiety, the loneliness, yeah, we are now more connected than ever before, and we are the most lonely than ever before. And we are in an age when we pretty much have exactly what we want when we want it. And we don't know what we're robbing ourselves in the future because we have insulated ourselves from failure, because we don't know how to fail very well. And that doesn't help us because we don't grow in success-only journeys. We only grow when we're uncomfortable. We only grow when we don't get what we want when we want it. We're robbing ourselves of real relationships.
There's definitely been an increase in anxiety and depression and loneliness and just overall mental health awareness. But just speaking personally, I can say that anytime when I'm starting to feel more anxious about something, or when I'm starting to say, okay, I've noticed more of a trend toward depressive thoughts, things like that. Even when I'm feeling more lonely, 9 times out of 10, I can tie that to, oh, I've been spending a lot more time on my smartphone. I definitely think that with the rise of social media, mental health has definitely come to the forefront of the conversation. And even though a lot of it is tied to harmful ways that social media is impacting mental health, I do think that it's a good thing that we're talking about it more, for sure.
Do you think the fear of missing out, or FOMO, plays a significant role in addiction?
FOMO. Absolutely. Again, I want to touch base on just that the social media platforms by design, I feel like naturally make people have FOMO. I think the fear that we might miss out on important news or events or a social update from a friend or connections keeps us constantly checking in on those platforms. And so I would even go as far to say that social media platforms exploit psychological tendencies using features like disappearing content. So when you have content that disappears on a platform, that makes it very hard for a person to try to step away from social media for even a day or two. I mean, that doesn't seem like a long period of time. But someone who has heavy social media usage and they step away for a day or two from social media, that FOMO is real, because all those 24-hour stories on Snapchat and Instagram, they're gone. And so instantly when they get back to it, there's that fear, or even while they're trying to step away from it, they have that fear of, what am I missing? What are people doing this weekend? That sort of thing. And so I think it's very real for people to have that fear of missing out. And I think that it just creates a cycle of addiction that's hard to break for people.
I think for certain personality types, FOMO is really a driving force of being on social media constantly. There are definitely times in my life when I have felt addicted to social media. My wife and I love to travel. We like traveling to Europe. We love cruises, all that kind of stuff. And as soon as we get done with a trip, our phones are sending us ads on social media of, here's another trip you can go on. And we're like, we don't have the money to do this, but we keep seeing this and we're like, oh, that does look super fun, And so anything like that where there's this constant barragement on social media of, hey, here's something else you can do. Hey, here's something else you can do. That's where I think the FOMO leads to addiction. Even if it's not really addiction to social media, it's addiction to all the experiences that you can experience that you wouldn't even know about if it wasn't for social media. So in that way, I think FOMO plays a big role, not only in personal social media, but FOMO plays a big role in professional and business advertising on social media for sure.
Do you think social media platforms influence students' self-esteem and body image?
Yes. Social media, I definitely think, has a significant negative impact on self-esteem and body image. I would say platforms, especially like Instagram, are filled with carefully curated and edited and filtered images that can definitely present an unrealistic body or an unrealistic definition or standard of beauty and even sometimes success. And so when people have that constant exposure to those idealized representations, it can lead to self-comparisons, especially for young people who are still, trying to figure out who they are and identify, or still developing their sense of self, I would say.
Does social media do a number on your self-esteem? Does it and body image? Yes. Of course, there are fake images of fake people that were created in Photoshop. But before that, we had the muscle mags, and boys still are excited about being really big. Okay, that's fine. If they want to go out and pursue bodybuilding, fine. Let them do it for a while and see how much it costs and see if it's worth the cost.
I was of the generation when I was in college, Instagram and Snapchat were fairly new. We didn't have TikTok yet, but I definitely saw a rise of this, you started to have like the Instagram models, you started to have the stories on Snapchat that would really just exemplify like the best and the most beautiful people in the world. And I definitely saw that negatively impacted people as far as like body image, self-esteem, things like that went.
But I'm also gonna say something else that's the opposite, and that is I have also seen a newer trend on social media platforms that is actually a positive impact on body image, in that I feel like those are platforms that can be used for body positivity and acceptance of all body types.
I definitely have had the impression over the last several years that students, especially like high school and college age students, have really gotten a better grasp of this. Some of this might be due to sort of the rise of like AI profiles. They will post pictures of people that are what they think is like the epitome of beauty, and it's completely unrealistic, and like we can see it, we're like, that doesn't even look like a real person, sort of like the Barbie doll effect of everything. But also just, I think the generations younger than me are social media natives, and so they've grown up with, hey, yeah, there's people that are out there that maybe look better than me, maybe have more money than me, maybe have more followers than me, right? But I think that you guys and even the younger generations have kind of figured out that's not reality. This isn't everybody. And I also think that there have been more trends on social media in the last 5 years or so of highlighting people that aren't like that, right? That we would call more of the everyday people. And I think that's a really beautiful thing of, yeah, maybe you don't have as many followers as somebody else, but you have just as impactful and important of a story to tell than all these other people. There's still going to be some of those issues out there for sure. Like, there are going to be people who are never satisfied in their own skin. They feel like, if I only looked like this, or if I only had a little bit more money, or if I had more followers on social media, then I would be happy.
If I'm picking what's the heavier one, I'm gonna say it's a negative impact.
In your experience, how does social media impact students' academic performance and attention spans?
I think the way it's affecting students is they are unfortunately more interested in the people who aren't in the room than the people who are in the room. And I think they have real relationships that are important, and I'm not going to say that they're not. I mean, they're talking to their mom, they're talking to their friends back home, they're talking to people that matter to them. Good. I mean, I don't want to take that away from them, but by the same token, it sure would be nice if they got to know the people that are 10 feet within them, within their circle. And that's a harder sell now. And I don't like that for them. I think there's something about physical spaces that you should be forced into rooms with people you disagree with and figure out how to not to kill each other in the same room. And I think that comes with conversations that you need to have that make things better.
I think the constant notifications and the urge to check in disrupts focus, disrupts, a study time. And, on average, if you are in the middle of a project or in the middle of an assignment, from the time that your notification goes off on your phone, even if your phone is over here, okay? From the time that you look up from your project and you look over, even if it's a quick text and you read it and you go right back to it, on average, it takes about 20 minutes to get back to the same spot that you were before the notification came in. So maybe a paper that could have taken you 30 minutes, you could triple that time because of the notifications. So I do think that is very disruptive to academics. Additionally, I would say the bite-sized, rapidly changing content on social media is shortening our attention spans, and I think it makes it harder for students to focus on a longer form academic material when we're so used to that quick short form format, and then we try to switch over to the longer format, and it's not entertaining us. I think that has quite the effect on our academic performance. So it's kind of an uphill battle for y'all.
I would say really ever since we've had visual media, there have been ways of distracting and limiting our attention span for sure. The other thing I will say about that is that while I have noticed a decrease in like long form attention span, multitasking has definitely increased. When I started teaching, when I was a student even, having your phone and your laptop out during class was just not a thing. Now it's like we get jittery if our phone's not like where we can immediately see it. And for the first like year or two I taught, I kind of tried to put the kibosh on that of like, hey, let's not have our phones out because that's just distracting us. That's totally unrealistic now. One, because I mean, everybody uses their phones, their laptops, whatever, for learning purposes. But two, it's almost like we can't focus and function unless we have these things that can distract us. And I've just kind of come to accept that as a teacher of if I ask my students to not have any electronics out, their minds are going to wander, right? And they're not going to be able to really focus on what's going on. But I think the biggest area that I've seen social media specifically have an impact on students' learning and their attention span is outside of the classroom when they're having to self-motivate.
How has social media impacted you personally?
Well, I have a podcast, and so I use Facebook to promote it. For me personally, it started robbing me of time that I didn't want to give up. So one of the things that I started doing is I just recognized there comes a point where this isn't helpful anymore. Stop. Now, old guy, easier for me to do that. I think a younger person who's looking for a lot of social acceptance, who's looking for a lot of external validation for some internal conflicts, yeah, it's going to be hard.
Social media has affected me personally in that it's part of my career, and so part of my marketing career in the marketing industry. I feel like it hasn't really impacted me too much until the past maybe like 12 years, I would say. When I first started in marketing, it wasn't really around. And me being in marketing never sleeps. And so my work life is also my personal life. And so it has affected me personally via my career. But personally, it has been a good thing for me just because it helps me stay connected, with long distance relationships, family and friends. Of course, there's also, not good things about social media. I have definitely been guilty of, just wasting too much time on it. And so I feel like it's kind of like, a twofold answer. It's been good and bad. But yeah, I feel like in the most way it's affected me is by my career.
I have had a very love-hate relationship with social media for most of my life, I would say. I am not in the generation that is considered social media natives, meaning that when I was a little kid, we didn't have social media really. There were some types of social media, but nothing that was as prolific as, say, Facebook or Instagram. But when I was in high school, social media definitely was becoming more and more popular. Instagram had just kind of become a thing. Snapchat had just been introduced. So it was definitely something that as a high schooler, as someone who was trying to fit in a lot of different circles, everyone was getting in it. And so it was something that I felt like I needed to have. And so I became, pretty well versed with how to use Facebook and Instagram. MySpace was a big one when I was in high school, which isn't really even a thing anymore. And then, once I got into college and really into grad school, I kind of started to notice, maybe not at the level of addiction, but I was just spending too much time on social media in a way that wasn't really benefiting me. There were definitely times when I would just sit and scroll for long periods of time. And when I would notice that there were things about how I was interacting with people or how I was feeling, that I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like the way that I'm feeling. So I've done several of the social media detoxes. I've definitely been one of those people who are like, all right, I'm done with social media forever. But as you know, because you're in the class right now, I teach social media. And so it's kind of a two-edged sword where I try to limit my usage of social media as much as possible, while also still staying with the trends, still at least needing to know what new platforms are out there, how people are using it. And so it is something that I do have to interact with daily just because of my job. I try not to post too much personal stuff on there. I don't have a lot of profiles that I just scroll like I used to. But I do still have kind of the big ones. I do still have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, that I use more on a professional level, until every once in a while I start to kind of get sucked in and go down those rabbit trails and everything like that. But for the most part, I try to keep it professional.
Do you think social media is fundamentally good or bad for society?
I think that this is going to be a question to ask me in 50 years, because we'll definitely see, I think, maybe even in 15 years, really what effect it has had. I think just in the past 25 years, you can definitely see that it has had both positive and negative impacts. It definitely has the potential to be a more positive thing for society if we are constantly working hard at making it that. When we sort of shut our brains off, or when we say we'll just kind of see where it goes, I think that it's easier for social media to sort of trend toward the negative side if we're not all actively trying to make it positive.
So I feel like, again, it's a neutral tool and can be used for good. Obviously can also be used for bad. It's a way, unfortunately, for people to sometimes spread misinformation. Even from a society standpoint, from little kids, it can be used as a bullying platform. So again, can be used, I think, for both.
And I think what you have to grapple with is there are bad things that happen with good tools. Just like a hammer, that can become a weapon, or it can become something that builds a house. So how are you going to use it? So I think it's important that you intentionally use social media in a good way. I think it's far too easy to villainize and vilify what social media can do without recognizing the great good it can do as well.
If we continue at our current rate of social media consumption, what do you think the future looks like?
Our phones have become extensions of ourselves. And so we're kind of living through the largest unregulated experiment in human history. So I imagine a future where our brains are just completely wired for that constant simulation. So I think it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. I do see further erosion of our attention spans and increases in the mental health issues. I think, my question is, at what point, what's the magic number that we're going to see in stats and research where society says, okay, wait, hold up, we got to do something. What is that magic number? And I feel like the numbers that I've seen are already scary. And so, I'm just curious about what that number is and when that's going to, be high enough for us to want to take more action. I also feel like we are not even at the tip of the iceberg, though. I feel like with AI and virtual reality, I think could make social media even more immersive, even more engaging, and as a result, even more addictive.
It's not going to go away, but I think artificial intelligence is going to start creating personas for you and creating realities for you that are far more interesting than the real people that are around you. In some ways, I'm very excited about that, and in some ways, I'm very skeptical about that.
The biggest ways I think that social media is going to change is how AI is impacting it. I think that in the last year we've seen a much bigger rise of AI influencing social media. And I think that if we become more versed in, okay, here's what's real, here's what's artificially created, I think we'll be fine. I think as AI becomes better at recreating things that look and feel more real, we're really going to have to start to use sort of our deductive minds to say, is this something that's real? Is this something that's actually going to benefit me? Or is this something that an algorithm has created to keep me on here to make more money?
Have you personally taken steps to limit your social media use? If so, what worked for you?
Well, yes. The answer is yes. I don't use Facebook very much anymore because I noticed that I was using it too much. That said, I probably use YouTube too much, and that's one that I have to start moderating myself with now, because the endless scroll of the 15-second video is a danger for me. And amazingly, they pick all the right topics. They know exactly what I'm interested in. So that's dangerous for me, and it still is a danger, and I have to overcome that. I think one of the things that I've learned how to do is tune out, well, I still need to learn how to do this. Don't get on Facebook as much.
Detoxing from social media for a few days or a few weeks actually sounds like a dream come true for me. But 90% of the time, I would say even 95% of the time, I really can't do that with my, because of the industry I'm in. And so I kind of take the Dave Ramsey approach, and I'm telling my social media platforms, you know, what I want from it or what I need, if that makes sense. And so the most effective approach that I've done is just being more intentional with why am I using these social media platforms and how I'm using them, if that makes sense. Like, what's the end goal here? Is the end goal at the end of the day, like, I want to unwind and, you know, like laugh and, you know, just be entertained? Or, you know, maybe my end goal is, you know, I want to use social media platforms as a tool to be spiritually fed from all over, you know, the world. So instead of, you know, if I have stuff coming up on my feed that I wouldn't actually be looking for or try to find, it's like, I don't want any part of it, right? I want to control the feed as much as I possibly can. And so as soon as I see something that doesn't, you know, resonate with me, or maybe it's like, this is a waste of my time, or this isn't part of my end goal, I click off of it immediately, and, you know, or I'll even click on it and say not interested. And so you got to train the feed. So that's something that's worked for me.
Big picture, yes. Every year or so, I don't exactly know why, but it seems to always happen when we're on a break from school. I just find myself sitting on the couch scrolling, and I'm like, I can't be doing this. So I'll go through and I'll delete the apps and I'll do all that stuff. Recently, especially this semester, because I'm teaching social media, I have to have all the apps on my phone. So I don't have TikTok, but I do have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all the big ones that we use, LinkedIn. But I have them in a separate folder all the way, like I have to scroll all the way over to get to them. And I don't have a lot of folders that my apps are in. All of my apps are in order alphabetically, just because that's how my brain works. except for my social media apps. They're in their own folder, and I always like to title it something that makes me think about, do I really want to do this? Like I'll just put like really in all caps as the name of the folder, because as I'm scrolling, I'll like look at that and it'll be like, really, do you really want to do this right now? And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe not. I think just always being mindful and being able to like cue yourself to like, hey, is this really what you're gonna want to spend your time doing? Has been the most beneficial for me.
What is one piece of advice you'd give to someone struggling with social media addiction?
Okay, so I would say to someone, if they're really struggling, I wouldn't actually give them a piece of advice. I would actually give them a link to a product, and I would tell them to buy it immediately. The product is called Brick, and you download the app, and then they send you a device. It's magnetic, so you can put it on your fridge, you can put it, wherever. And so you kind of, you tell the device, this is my, these are the apps that I need to not block, but just put on snooze, so to speak. And so when you are wanting to kind of, go on social media platforms, you have to physically go to the device and you have to scan your phone and it lets you in. So what this device can do is it kind of, it gives you back productivity time. It makes sure you're not just going to these apps out of boredom, which is, I think, I'd love to see the numbers on that. I feel like so many people do that. It's just out of boredom. Or, maybe they're in a uncomfortable social situation. They get out their phone and they start looking at their apps. I think so many times, we just dismiss it. That's not me. I'm not a heavy social media usage person, But then if you are starting to examine yourself and you actually look at the numbers, and numbers don't lie, you can be impacted by that quite a bit to where you want it to, the number impacts your behavior and it alters your behavior then.
I would say, just like with any other type of addiction, don't try to do it by yourself. Just get somebody else that maybe doesn't struggle with that, or maybe somebody that does, and you kind of keep each other accountable. I know that my wife is not addicted to social media, but she is sort of the same mindset of me. She's like, I want to spend less time on it. So what she has done is she has actually set up her screen time where she only gets an hour across all of her social media, and it's password set, and she doesn't have the password. I'm the only person that knows the password. And so if she wants to use it more, she has to come to me and be like, I want to use social media. And then I'm like, do you really want to use social media more? And because of her job, a lot of times she has to, but doing something like that, where using your phone's capabilities to actually limit how much you can use, and then giving control of that to somebody else, will force you to be on social media less.
Reach out for help. Get people who are accountable, that you can be accountable to. You need to identify yourself as a moderator or as an indulger. Can you control this or not? And if you can't, be honest and take the steps you need to take in order to get rid of it.
If you're a person that, like, you get out of class, you go back to your dorm room and you just plop down on the couch and start scrolling, taking that away is going to be really difficult for a long time, and it's not going to solve your anxiety, your depression, your loneliness right off the bat. It will probably actually exacerbate that. It'll make it worse. So what you need to do is find things to fill that time. Go hang out with your friends. Go on a walk.
Go outside, look at the sun.
Read the Bible, spend time in prayer, whatever it is, whether it's with friends or with yourself, find ways to fill that time with something that is going to be a lot more beneficial to you than just scrolling through TikTok.